Fadi's journey into real estate began with his father, brother, and himself flipping homes. What started as a family business became a passion with cause and purpose. He realized he loved the real estate industry and hasn't looked back since helping make people's dreams come true like he did for his family. Fadi is always available, reliable, and trustworthy, which has meant the world to his clients and their dreams of homeownership. Fadi loves spending time with his family, whether that's coaching his son's baseball or football team or a fun activity with his wife and sons. Something he'd love for you to know about himself is that he is a native. He was born and raised in San Francisco, went to high school in San Francisco, and to college in San Francisco as well. He's a diehard Giants, 49ers, and Warriors fan. Please welcome Fadi to the stage. We are so happy to have you here. Fadi is going to be talking with us about those quick flips. Make sure that you can turn that camera and microphone on, sir. If not, just checking out, might have some issues. You're good to go. Come on up. It's like The Price is Right, right? Like I roll out the red carpet for you.
Hello.
There you go. How's it going, Fadi?
Good. How are you?
Good day.
Thanks for that lovely intro.
See, you were so worried about it, and I hope it was justifiable. Was it good?
I approve. Yeah.
Okay, good. Awesome. Well, we're gonna rock and roll right over into quick flips. So, Fadi, how do you find deals to flip in this market?
There's actually various ways to find flips. You could do a bunch of things. There's one where what I use is I use a wholesaler, and what a wholesaler is they find homes that are in probate sales or sellers got them inherited by someone who passed away, or it's a trust and they just want to get rid of it, and then the wholesaler would get that home into contract with themselves, and then they'd reach out to someone like me or any other investor and say, hey, I got a house, right. We already negotiated the price for you, and we can assign the contract to you, so they'll just flip it from their contract that's in their name to my name or whoever investor's name would be. So that's one way. And then you can do another way of just reaching out to a certain agent, in a certain city. So if you have an investor who's looking in, for example, San Bruno, you would reach out to a San Bruno agent who specializes in that city and say, hey, do you have any clients looking to sell? Do you know of any homes that are in bad shape, dilapidated, abandoned, things that you know of that could work? And we would network that way. Or you can also go on a website called one of the websites called Property Radar. And what that website is, I think Perry touched on this last week, was, homes that are in pre-foreclosure or the homeowners are in default. You can reach out to those homeowners to try to save them from foreclosure or from defaulting and, to pick up the house that way. There's also a lot of old school kind of way of doing things. You can go and pound the pavement, knock on doors in a certain area that you think a home is a good flip home, just by looking out the outside. If it looks dilapidated or it looks run down or even abandoned, knock on homes' doors, see if you get the homeowner to talk to you a little bit, get some more information, see if you can get them to sell one way or the other or sooner or later. And then, I'm confident that I can get into a conversation with, neighbors in the area. Somebody walking their dog. Hey, what's going on? Tell me a little bit more about the neighborhood. Tell me a little bit more about this home that's sitting here. Looks like it's kind of beat up and run down.
Yep.
Do you have any information on it? And then we would go from there and hopefully, get in contact with the seller and try to make a deal that way.
Wow, sounds great. I love it. In your opinion, what is considered a quick flip, and what is the cost and timeline for those things?
A quick flip is something that you don't need to spend a lot of money and time on. Well, what I like to use is slap lipstick on the proverbial pig. and what that means is kind of just cosmetically updating it, changing the paint, and figuring out what minor upgrades are going to work to sell the home to somebody who can do more upgrades later. So, simply painting the exterior, the interior, changing the doors and the hardware of the home, changing up some landscape, things that don't cost a lot of money that can get you a lot of return when you need to flip the home and sell it. It could take anywhere between 45 to 120 days. depending on how much work it needs. And the key element to a quick flip is the time. Time is of the essence. You have to be very cognizant of your time and how much time you want to spend on that home, because the longer you wait, the more the holding costs will eat into your profits. So you really want to hunker down a time, set your contracting team to that time, and make sure they have enough bandwidth, they have enough manpower to get that work completed in the time you need it to be done.
Perfect sense. Love it. So, and I also like your analogy. Very, very appropriate. So, do you see investors pulling permits for quick flips?
As a realtor, we recommend all investors to pull permits, just to cover your rear end, to make sure your all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. You want to make sure that the buyer is comfortable with the fact that you did the work with permits, because there's oversight, there's inspections, there's guaranteeing that you did the work with a licensed contractor. If you don't pull permits, which a lot of investors, they don't heed my recommendation, and they do work without permits. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I would definitely recommend pulling permits if you want to maximize your profit. When you're not busting down any walls or reconfiguring the footprint of the home, you're not adding any electrical or plumbing, you could probably get away with not pulling any permits because you're not doing any major renovations. You're kind of just cosmetically changing the home. So depending on the type of work the home needs, you start to change out major components, it starts to get more extensive. So you really want to pull permits when it comes to that. And also you run the risk of losing a lot of time with the permit process.
Right.
With COVID-19 and all this, time is slowing down. You could, like everyone was saying before me, you can get permit usually approved in 3 to 4 weeks. Now I'm actually currently working on a project where I submitted plans in August and I'm still waiting on permits.
Wow.
So it takes a while because of COVID. With pre-COVID, you could get away with getting it done quickly.
So how do you determine what to renovate in a home?
How my team and I determine what to renovate, we put ourselves in the shoes of a buyer, and we ask ourselves, what's going to make me buy this home? What's the main selling point of this home? And when we do that, we want to be wowed. What's the wow factor? So the wow factor and the selling points are usually a kitchen and the bathrooms. In essence, bedrooms are just walls, 4 walls, so there's not much to it. So you really want to focus on the selling point. And the selling points are the kitchens and bathrooms. So really focus on that and try to keep cabinets if you can reface them, if you could paint them, change the hardware on them. Maybe if the countertops are quartz or granite, keep those, of course, because those look nice and they give a nice touch to a kitchen. The main objective is really to beautify the property enough to where it brings good returns for the buyer. And if the buyer could live with those changes and those remodels that you did for a while, then that's great. And then they can do whatever major changes they want to do later.
Would you recommend using a designer then to pick out the finishes?
Yeah, I do, because if you don't have a design eye, if you don't have that knack for what works, what colors work, what goes with certain appliances or cabinets or things like that, I would definitely recommend you hire an interior designer. You want to style maybe one thing in your mind, but style for someone else maybe another thing, so you don't want it to clash. It's happened to us before where we thought something was fantastically looking and everyone's going to love it, but first thing that someone walked in, one of our flips was like, "Ooh, what the heck what's this?" So you want to avoid that. You want to avoid something that you think is nice. Rather, give it to the expert. Let the expert put her knowledge or his knowledge in to the designing of the home, and let them pick the finishes, because your finishes may be a lot different from someone else's. So my biggest thing is neutrality.
Yeah.
Be very neutral colors, neutral finishes, not too high-end things, because things can get dicey.
For sure. Well, we've got a couple questions in the Q&A, and I've got one question here that I want to ask you as well, but I'm thinking the two of them kind of feed into each other, so we can kind of hit it together, 2 birds with 1 stone. So This one says, what are some ways investors fund these projects? And someone put in the Q&A as well, when you work with an investor for off-market properties, do you do a dual agent agreement for the seller and buyer? So I think you can tie those in together for me.
Yeah, so ways to fund the projects, there's several ways. You can first look at your personal funds. You can see what you potentially are able to take down on your own and how much you want to invest on your own. So you could definitely use your own cash if you have cash on hand. And then you can look at other funding options if that doesn't work. If it's not a complete gut, if you're not completely ripping all the interior walls down and framing and plumbing and all that, you can get a conventional loan. You can reach out to a lender and say, hey, I'm just doing a simple remodel, not doing anything crazy. What can you do for me on that? And then there's the hard money lending option. I believe Brenda Chen is here, and she's going to be talking about that, and she's the expert on hard lending, so I'm not going to steal her thunder. I'll let her talk about that. And then there's also you can form a syndication with partners, and you can have a group of investors. A syndication of partners is bring in people who want to have a piece of the pie. You give them a portion of the equity of the home, and you can bring them on as a partner and say, whatever your percentage partnership is, you will get that much back in your return. And then investors, also same thing. You borrow money from them, and you can just give them a percentage back on their return. If you find the right property and the owners own it free and clear, so if you buy a property from an owner who owns it free and clear, doesn't own anything on it, you can also have the option of carry back. You can have them, you can pay them monthly rather than paying them one lump sum all up front. You can pay them monthly so they have some sort of monthly income going on for themselves.
Perfect.
And then can you repeat the question?
It was a dual agreement, right? Do you have to, I knew you were.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that for sure, but it gets tricky when you represent both sides. So I'd recommend having a buyer have their own buyer's agent for sure.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Last question that we have right now for in the Q&A is, what's the minimum ROI you would expect on your flips?
For us, we base our ROIs on anywhere between 15 to 20% minimum.
Wow.
Yeah, so if we're making less than 15, that's kind of tough to take on, because you're spending, in the Bay Area, you're spending at least $1 million on a home, and if you're only going to make 100 to 150,000, not a lot of people want to put up that much to make so little. So it's got to make monetary sense. Oh, it's going back to what everyone else before me saying, if the numbers make sense and it makes sense for you, and if 15 to 20% is too much and you're okay with making less, then by all means, go for it.
That all makes perfect sense. And I love the way that we can loop everything back to the people that have been here before to make all of this make sense now for everyone else. So really appreciate your great answers and all of the information. Everybody's saying the same thing, such great information. Thanks for all of that. You really did a good job letting us know. And I like all the advice that you're giving people about the aesthetic to go for this as well. So